Hello, welcome to the Hill and Ponton podcast. I'm Carol Ponton, and today I'm here with Kerry Baker, one of my favorite people ever. How are you, Kerry?
I'm doing good. How are you, Carol?
Good. Kerry is always one of my personal heroes. I don't think he gets I don't think he gets the reward he should get for all the work that he does for veterans on his own dime, on his own time that nobody ever talks about. He worked with John Stewart and the PACT Act, and he's just gotten some more benefits by working with the secretary. So we're going to talk about this halfway through, but I want you to realize this is something Kerry takes all of this to heart. He recognizes when something is not right, and he goes about getting it fixed. And he has been working diligently for some time now to get these benefits that were just granted. So I want you to know that these benefits just don't fall out of the sky. There were people like Kerry who recognize veterans are hurting, they need these benefits, and if we can get the government to presumptively service connect them, this is going to make a huge difference in their life. So we're going to talk about this halfway through, but Kerry, you're always my hero. You need to know that.
Well, thank you, Carol. I really, really appreciate those kind words, but without you specifically, and Brian and Matt, allowing me to do what enough rope to kind of run amok in VA's world, I couldn't do that stuff.
Thanks,
And
Kerry, but you were doing that long before Carol and Brian and Matt. You have
uh,
been you have been a crusader for the veterans, and I just don't think you ever get enough credit for that. So I'm going to make sure I give it to you.
well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Nate, let's go. 1 of 5. Hiya. Thank you for everything you all do. I was recently rated 50% mental health. It is my understanding that if I have ever considered self harm, I should be rated at 70%. However, doing my CNP mental exam, I lied about self harm issue for fear of firearm confiscation. Per your advice in an earlier question and answer, I submitted a letter on the appropriate form stating what I had done and why, but the rating came in at 50% shortly after I submitted the letter. Honestly, I don't think it was looked at or considered for the rating. Do I understand correctly that if self harm was ever considered for the rating, no, was ever considered in the past, I should be rated at 70%, even if it has been several years since that has been the case? That is, can it be reduced if my condition is improving like other medical conditions? Should I appeal the 50% to a higher level review and ask for 70% based on previous self harm thoughts in the distant past? How would you handle that, Kerry?
I would approach with caution. All right. I understand what you're saying about self-harm, but you got to look at it like this. This is not a mathematical equation. You know, here 1 plus 1 doesn't necessarily equal 2. Uh, does self-harm, does that illustrate a more severe uh, disability? Quite possible, but that's only one small part of a larger whole. I would say that self-harm by itself is probably not going to get you there. It's, what's the disability picture as a whole? Um, does self-harm include suicidal ideation? Does it include suicidal attempts? If it doesn't, you know, obviously suicide is a more severe aspect of mental health, and there's a lot of others. Um, so I would say, yeah, that's just one part. It doesn't mean that you're going to get 70%, and you should not approach it that way. Um, and if it's been in the distant past, I can't remember when you said the rating was, but if it's been that long ago, you might not be able to appeal uh, for a higher rating. You may just have to apply for a higher rating. Yes, they could reduce you. It's not likely, but it's always a possibility. And I heard you mention you were afraid of gun confiscation. Just so you understand, that's not going to happen unless you were found incompetent. The VA actually adjudicated you incompetent. Okay, one of the questions on the gun questionnaire when you're trying to purchase a firearm is if you've ever been adjudicated as incompetent by an authority like Social Security, like VA. That's an official finding that you are, for financial reasons, incompetent to manage your own affairs, and therefore, and that what that triggers a, a note to the NICS system, NICS, I believe, National Instant Criminal. That, you know, don't quote me on that. I'm messing that acronym up. But they're who put, you know, who put out the list basically who can and can't own guns. So if you haven't been found incompetent, that's not gonna getting 70% or why you got 70%. That's not gonna prevent that.
And that's, Kerry, I say this over and over again to veterans. I don't know who you're listening to, but they're not going to take your guns away because you have suicidal ideation. That it's all based on competence. And so and the way they do that is, do you know what your income is and what your bills are, and can you handle your own funds? So they're two absolutely different things. Veterans constantly say, if I talk about the fact that I feel like killing myself or I don't want to live, then they'll take my guns away. That's not true. Please. It's only, as Kerry said, if they find you incompetent to handle your own funds. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you have to be really, first of all, I'm worried that if it's so far in the past, it's really not going to help you. But you also have to be pretty clear. What does self-harm mean? That you're going to cut yourself, or that you want to kill yourself, or you want to kill other people, or I'm not really sure. But you need to be, as Kerry said, really clear about this and paint a full picture as to what's going on with you. So two separate things. Don't worry about your guns. And the other thing is you really need to paint a full picture of what you mean by self-harm.
Yeah. And I would say too, on the gun thing, look, I'm an avid gun owner. Okay. You know, obviously no one wants to get their guns taken away. You know, if you're 100% for PTSD, you know, there's always a debate. Should you be out there having guns? You know, that's not for me to debate. That's for other people to debate. But understand the other question that goes along with, you know, have you been adjudicated incompetent, is if you've been committed to a mental institution. You know, that's I don't view that the same as seeking mental health care. Okay, if you've been committed, you know, basically against your will. So that's something to keep in mind. And I say that because, look, some people that hear this may go, well, I'm going to go to the ER and claim that I'm suicidal. One, don't do that if you're not suicidal.
No.
And two, that might get you committed. Okay, it's just something to think about. You know, and then you know, now you fall into another category where they might take your guns. So just keep that stuff in mind.
Nate? Is my husband, who is 100% scheduler, permanent and total, eligible for SMC due to the following ratings? The first 12 are related to Parkinson's, 50% Parkinson's, 40 lower extremity left, 40% extremity tremors right, 40 upper extremities left, 30%, I guess, for the other 30. Okay, so now I'm sure, is it constipation 30%, GERD 30%, difficulty chewing, stopped, loss of movement 10. You can go to the next one. The minor ones I don't think are an issue. Speech, hemorrhoids. Kerry, what would you say to that? I think we may need a little.
Yeah, you may need to go back to the beginning on that.
It says, since all of his ratings are for Parkinson's and 50% for migraines.
Oh,
so,
sorry.
So I guess he has 100% that's all for
SMC. Okay, all right. Go back to the very end where Carol was just reading. Sorry. Okay, so all right. So the answer is, I don't know. I mean, given what you just provided there, you can't take just those ratings and say, all right, just hit this alone makes, you know, entitles you to SMC. Now, you mentioned the single 60%. I think what you're referring to there is if you have a single 100% and a separate 60, you get the SMCS rating,
Right.
which is equal to housebound. You don't have to have a single 60, but you do have to have a single 100 and a separate 60. That separate 60 could be combined, with 3 or 4 different ratings, but you have to have the single 100. So no, if everything you just listed there is all the ratings, then no, that's not going to qualify you for that. The next question would be, is SMC, out of all those ratings, that doesn't necessarily mean they got it right. Maybe your husband's in a wheelchair, and I don't know if that's the case or not, but let's say those ratings for the lower extremities were 30 and 40%, but he's in a wheelchair and that's the only way he can get around. Then I would argue that, all right, those ratings are incorrect. You need to be rated for special monthly compensation based on loss of use of the lower extremities. And then there's your ticket to SMC. Okay. So if none of those things, if you got use of your extremities, and it has to be loss of use, having trouble getting around is not usually going to be good enough. Uh, Having weakness in your upper extremities is not going to be good enough. If you can't grasp and manipulate objects at all with your hands, then you're talking loss of use of the hands. If you can't balance and propel uh, at all with your feet, then you're talking loss of use of the feet, and that's when you're getting into SMC. You may have loss of use of a creative organ, and that's SMCK. You can certainly have the K in addition to everything you listed there. Uh, but that's, I'm kind of speculating there, so because I don't know the severity, obviously, of
And
everything.
I'm with you. And unfortunately, Parkinson is not something that stays stable. It gets worse. So the other thing I would say, have you filed for aid and attendance? It looks like he has significant problems with both bilateral upper and lower extremities. Does
Yeah.
he have a problem with memory? I think you should file for aid and attendance. And if like Kerry said, he has trouble with his walking, standing, grasping, then you need to file for loss of use of hands
Yeah.
and feet. And that's going to get you the SMC you really want. That's going to get you up into the R's. So that's what I'd like to know. And I think you should file for those if you think there's a chance of that.
Well, and that's a really good point, Carol. That's why there are two of us on here, 'cause two heads
Yeah,
are much
because
better
we
than one.
both,
I didn't even think about the aid and attendance, just straight up regular aid and attendance. And I would say this because a lot of people with Parkinson's who may not have complete loss of use of an extremity, certainly still qualify for aid and attendance, like Carol's suggesting. If you need help dressing and bathing and feeding yourself and all that, you could easily still have the use of your extremities and need that help. But I would say this, because we see it all the time on a case just like this, we were 100% due to multiple ratings. You file for A&A, VA comes out and denies A&A, and the evidence says you need A&A. In fact, it'll say it so clearly that they'll do a favorable finding on the rating decision that says you require aid and attendance. And then what do? They deny aid and attendance. And you're probably sitting there scratching your head, that what the and fill in the blank. That is because VA has an internal policy, a suggestion in their manual that says generally one would think you would require a single 100% for aid and attendance simply because you require a single 100% for a housebound rating.
right.
So what happens there? So that tells the rater, well, you can't give aid and attendance if somebody doesn't have a single 100%. That is wrong. Okay. Carol knows exactly what I'm talking about here.
Exactly.
But the reason they do that is because of an instruction in the M21 manual that 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 completely violates the law, because there's nothing in the regulation or the statute that says you need a single 100%. Right? You get that for housebound because it's simply a mathematical equation. If you have a single 100 and you have 60, you get housebound.
Right.
It doesn't mean you are confined to your home. Okay, you need a single 100% for if you are confined to your home. So in that light, what they're saying kind of makes sense, but they take it overboard. That they don't realize that you could have a back problem and have, you can't get up and have radiculopathy where you can't bend. You could need aid and attendance from that, and there's no mechanical way to get to 100% with that disability, but you still need aid and attendance. So their goal of, oh, you need a single 100%, it doesn't fly. Appeal that to the Board of Veterans Appeals.
Exactly.
Okay. It's a favorable finding. It's going to be found in your favor by the board, because the board realizes you don't need a single 100%. The board comes back and grants those. So anyway, I don't mean to get on a soapbox. We see it all the time. We appeal them to the board. We tell the board, look, VA's made a favorable finding, which is binding on the board, that this vet needs aid and attendance. The board comes back and grants it. And then you've got your aid and attendance. So,
and you know, for so long, because of the backlog at the BVA, we were saying we were trying to knock it out at the regional office, and it just doesn't work. They just don't follow the law. So now that the BVA has gotten better, they're actually doing the direct appeals. And so this is something that you have to check, but you probably could file a direct appeal and you're going to get a decision relatively soon. So don't hang around at the regional office. Just go to the board on these.
Yeah. I don't even waste my time with a higher level review.
No, I don't either.
Because they think that little M21 manual is the word of God. And it don't matter what the statute says, what Congress wrote, their little instruction supersedes everything.
That's the truth, unfortunately. I am Agent Orange presumptive and never filed a claim. Diagnosed with ischemic heart disease in 2006, 2 stents and another in 2016, triple bypass 2019 with defibrillator implant 2022. Also, prostate cancer 2016, prostatectomy 2016, radiation 2016, hormone therapy 2018 to 2020, and hormone therapy for life 2023 to control spread into bone. Are these conditions both worth 100%? And if so, do I qualify for SMCS? You need to go back. I didn't know what the heart, ischemic heart disease, 2 stents, another triple bypass, defibrillator implant. Looks to me like that. What do you think?
Well, I don't think we can say that it's definitely 100%. I mean, it's certain. You certainly have a good claim there.
Yes.
I would absolutely file a claim. You're entitled. If you're a Vietnam vet or otherwise exposed to herbicides, that's a very good claim.
Yeah.
A lot of it's going to depend on the severity of the heart. The heart could be anywhere on the severity scale. And I say that because there's new criteria for the heart from a couple of years ago. Prior to that, the defibrillator would have gotten you 100%. Right. Now, that's not the same as a pacemaker. That won't get you 100%, but a defibrillator would have gotten you 100%. They don't. I think that part's changed. They basically rate the heart now on METs. In other words, at what level of activity do you get winded and dizzy and get chest pains, and basically, because some people with real bad heart conditions will get those kind of symptoms from talking and eating.
Yes.
If you've got bad congestive heart failure or something, other people can go out and mow the yard with a push mower and before they ever get those symptoms. So it's based on that. So I can't say that you definitely get 100%. I mean, you'd be, from everything you just listed there, you'd be pretty close.
Yeah.
If the cancers are active, then that's 100%.
Well, if he's having to take the medication, then that exact thing, we've gotten 100%. In fact, they denied at the regional office, and then the BVA granted it because that medication they have to take in order to keep him alive. So that's still being treatment.
Is that a chemotherapy type medication? Or?
You want to see exactly what he put in there? I think it's the last thing, Nate.
Oh, the hormone therapy?
It's a hormone therapy, right.
Okay.
So, and remember, I don't think it changed, did it? Remember, Kerry used to be able to get a rating both for the coronary artery disease and for the defibrillator. Remember?
I think so. I'd have to look at the rating schedule. You may still be entitled to a higher rating because of the defibrillator. Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head if that changed with the new criteria.
All I can say, Dan, is I hope you filed for these years ago and been getting benefits.
Yeah, I'd absolutely file for those.
Yeah. Nate? Roger Smith, 100% for prostate cancer, 30% for heart, 10 for tinnitus. Is glaucoma being treated by VA worth putting in for? That depends on how bad it is, because if it's, I mean, you're also going to have to say, what is it service connected to? I know diabetes would get you there. I'm not sure how you're going to get that from those.
And I would say, you know, they're going to rate, let's just hypothetically say it's service connected. They're going to rate you on your visual acuity,
right,
while wearing glasses if you need them. And so, like, in other words, if you can put a pair of glasses on and you've got 20/20 vision, that's going to be 0% if it's service connected. So it's just something to keep in mind. It would need to come up to another 40. I'm thinking with that 30% to get us 60, apart from maybe another 30. I'd have to do the math on that. To benefit you in any kind of way, since you got 100% pre-cancer there.
Right. So remember, you may have a problem, but if it isn't really a problem, you just have the diagnosis, then that's not going to help you. So you always need to know, how bad is this? And also you need to know, how easy is it to be service connected? You don't want to pay money for an independent medical exam and get a 0% rating. So you need to check all of that before you file a claim. Kennedy Scott, if you have a docket that's 2014, do you know how long it takes the bathroom law judge to put your docket? And I think you guys are doing an outstanding job. Thanks. First of all, thank you guys, what you're doing. I have a case that's in the docket that's in 2014. Do you know how long it will be before they put it? I think if it's 2014, you really should write a letter to the BVA and ask what's going on. That's extremely old, don't you think, Kerry?
Well, I just better be careful complimenting those judges like that. Okay. Let's hope they don't watch us, Carol.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. So first, if you really have a 2014 docket, you should have a decision any day. I mean, that doesn't make
that has to be legacy.
Something's wrong there. Yeah. Unless it'll remand and it just went back to the board. That's the only thing that would make sense to me.
And those are handled. I've not seen one sitting there more than 60 days. So
no, they're quick.
Yeah.
So I'd like to know,
how long ago was the last time you heard from the board?
Yeah.
And
are you sure it's a 2014 docket?
Yeah.
Are you certain about that? Can you look up the docket number on, do you have access to their online stuff? Can you call VA, the toll-free number, if you don't, and have them give you the docket number? That would tell you if it's a 2014 number. Have you switched to AMA? Because if you switch to AMA, you don't have a 2014 docket date. I can guarantee that. So AMA didn't exist in 2014.
Yeah. So there are a lot of things we just don't know the answer to, Scott. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, but if it's a remand and they went back up from a legacy appeal and it's a 2014 docket, if it's sitting there more than, like Carol said, 60 days or so, then I'd be wondering where my decision's at.
Yeah. So if the last thing you got was an SSOC or a statement of the case, SOC, that should have been handled within 60 days at the most. And it had to be an SSOC if you're still in legacy, because that long ago they would have made a decision.
I have one right now that's a 2019 docket date, and it's been back to the board from remand about 3.5, almost 4 months. Now we bloodied their lips a little bit and probably blacked their eyes. It's about the 5th remand. We should have had a decision on that already, but we haven't. And I know it's sitting there waiting because I can see it. But 2014, you're talking 2014 versus 2019 docket.
Yeah, something's wrong.
Yeah.
So another step. Part 1 of 2, I have an intent to file with a deadline March 25, and the claim is complete and ready to submit. I've since been diagnosed with hypertension and I want to claim it, but do not have time to go through my C-file for evidence to develop a nexus. How should I file, knowing that I may have to file a supplemental and take advantage of my current intent to file date. Thanks. I would file both of them so that you're preserving that intent to date file. I
Yeah.
wouldn't worry about. How about you?
No, I would. At this point, who cares about the nexus?
Yeah.
Obviously, you need a nexus to get service connected, but you don't need the nexus to file the claim and get it
No.
pending and preserve your effective date. Use the intent to file for everything you're going to potentially file for, so that that effective date's preserved. You can start developing for your nexus once you file.
Exactly.
Or,
It's my sign. File the claim, please. Yeah. Nate?
Yeah, and you try to keep everything on one sheet of paper if you can. You won't be able to in the AMA for very long. If you have enough claims, it's going to get bifurcated, but try to start them all on one sheet.
John Johnson, what should I do about inadequate exam from the regional office? BVA remanded two times because of QTC exam. My doctor will not fill anything out more. My doctor will not fill anything more out. It's been 8 years. So I'm not sure if this exam was, would you go back to the first one? What should I do about an inadequate exam for the regional office? The BVA remanded 2 times because of the QTC exam. I'm not sure whether you've had another exam and you want to say there's a problem with it, which I would use a 4138 to do that, or because you feel like you need something to contradict that exam. Kerry, do you know what he's asking?
Yeah, I mean, if I had to guess, it sounds like you're battling the age-old problem of you can't get a good examination. The board remands it because they don't like the one you've got. You end up getting one that's just as crappy as the one you had. They continue your denial and they send you, and you appeal back to the board, and they look at it and go, "Oh, well, this still isn't good. Send it back and do it over." We deal with that all the time.
Yes.
There's no magic bullet to that. Without seeing the specifics of the case, it's hard to, and it's exactly what's wrong with the examination. It's difficult to, to do that. You may have to go to a private doctor if you can. You try to start early if you have access to your examination and you know what's wrong with it. Try to start writing letters, before it gets back to the board, and try to get them to fix it before it gets back there. There's no easy way to do that. We deal with it all the time, and it's a pain in the
And it seems to be getting worse instead of better with all these new companies. But get a VA 21-4138 and because they will react to that, and put on there exactly which exam you're talking about, what was supposed to happen, but what didn't happen, or what you find was said that you didn't say, or things you said that didn't show up. Point everything out and say, they have a duty to assist. I did not have an adequate exam. I want another one. I'm ready and waiting to have it. And then remember, you have a right to have a different examiner. So if they keep sending you to the same person, say, no, I'm not going there. I want a different doctor. And if that company won't give that to you, call the VA, the 1-800 number, 800-827-1000, ask to speak to the VA scheduling people and tell them your problem. And they'll write that up and at least put it in the file. And sometimes they may send you to another company. Sorry, I don't really know the question, but I hope we've helped you somehow. Yolanda. Okay, I can't do that one. One of two. No fellow vet that's rated 70% PTSD. They are still working. They need the money, but must resort to self-harm to get through the working day. Wow. And interactions with others, increasing suicidal and homicidal thoughts. Should they file for increase to PTSD, chances of being granted? I would definitely say there's something. I would file for that, wouldn't you, Kerry?
Yeah, if you're having suicidal and homicidal ideations, those are pretty serious symptoms, obviously. Yeah. So yeah, I probably would file for it. They're not, it's not going to get increased if you don't.
Ask for it, right?
You have to, I would file for it.
And also, this person, so I think it would be helpful if you send in a buddy statement saying, this is what I observed. I'm really concerned about this person, so that the the VA knows exactly what's going on. And remember, when you send a buddy statement in, you don't want to put in, this is a nice guy, he's my best friend, he deserves this. What you want to put in is, what's the question? The question is, what's going on mentally with this person that's scaring you and that's dangerous? And that's what you want to put in there. Concentrate on that. Cynthia, I filed a higher level review for my sleep apnea, but it got sent back as a duty to assist error. What should I do now? I feel like I already explained clearly in my higher level review how my sleep apnea is service connected. So why can't the higher level review representative approve it, even with a duty to assist error? What happens to your rating when the VA, was it? No, okay. So you go back to the first, Nate. I filed for a higher level review, but it got sent back. So what the VA is saying, that something, that the decision was wrong, that they didn't do something that they should have. So it looks like they may be acting on what you filed before, don't you think, Kerry?
Yeah, and I would say too, it sounded like you were asking, why can't the HLR or the DRO rate it even with, or decide it even with a duty to assist error? The, the way the AMA is written and the way they've interpreted it, tells them if there's a duty to assist error that they see, they must return it to get that duty to assist error. Now, you would think, all right, what if there is actual other evidence that they can overlook that duty to assist error and still grant the benefit? Some will do that. Okay, if that's what you're asking, but there are others that think, no, I have to return it. I have to get that duty to assist error fixed. And it's, it's a misunderstanding. In reality, they don't have to if they could otherwise grant it, but they may feel they can't otherwise grant it.
Yeah.
So that's the part you don't know. And it's sleep apnea. They're going to make you fight for sleep apnea. They always do, it seems like. Carol and I see it all the time.
Yeah. There's some claims they just don't want to grant. So I think they're in abundance of caution. That's what they're doing to make sure that they don't get into any trouble. Reggae boys, what happens to your rating when the VA changed the schedule rating? Say, for instance, you're 100% permanent and total on the old schedule rating, but it's not in law anymore. The new schedule rating is no more than 40%. Okay, Kerry.
Leave your claim alone.
Yes.
I mean, they're not going to just up and reduce you because the law changed. Okay, that's not going to happen. Most of the time, they won't. And I should take that with a little grain of salt when I say most of the time. All right, some of the time, maybe half the time. You file an increase and they rated you under an old law when the law's changed now. If the new law would reduce you, a lot of people will not go forth and carry out that reduction, but some people will.
Yes.
But if you're 100%, they're not going to go back and look at your case unless, one, they have it set for a reevaluation down the road. But if you're permanent and total, the only way that they're going to go back and reevaluate you is if you file another claim. Don't.
Yeah.
A really good example of that is the spine ratings. When the intervertebral disc syndrome in 2001 or prior, I think you could get a 60% rating. Not easily, but you could do it. You're not going to get one of those now. 40%, you're lucky if you get one of those.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd leave it alone if you're sure of it.
Mr. Williams, hello. How can the VA regional office, DRO, God, I wish I had an answer for this, not follow the BV remand instructions? When a judge is laying out what needs to be done, appeal was just sent back to the BVA after continual denying, ignoring the judge instructions. Now it's saying appeal has to be worked in order. VA 9 was first received. Appeal is from 2017 legacy. which was in May of 2020. The VA judge told VHA to rate all foot conditions, which is over 9 feet, foot. I'm currently SMCS and K right now, thanks. All foot conditions, which is over 9 foot. Do you understand that, Kerry?
Unless he's saying there's 9 conditions total in
Wow.
the feet, I don't.
That may be it. I don't know.
Maybe I don't know that I could think of 9 conditions of a foot. I don't think there's 9 in the rating schedule. But so I know I could be wrong there. It may be a typo that he had in there. But
regardless, this is something Kerry and I run into all the time. They do not follow the judge's instruction. Now, if you are still in legacy, that's good. But if you crossed over to AMA, you're going to have to wait in line again. And that's the bad part of one of the bad parts about AMA. So I think you just need to file a 4138 and explain clearly what was done and what should have been done, and ask that it can be corrected. I don't know what you're going to do, but like all delays.
Yeah, there's always, and there always has been a lot of confusion on BVA remands. Where the development folks will almost always try to comply with a BVA remand. So if the board says, get an exam, they're going to get an exam. Get these records, they're going to try to get those records. Now, if they say something specific that examiner should consider, and the examiner doesn't specifically consider it, that rater may not hold that examiner to the letter of the law in the board's remand. Right? We see that a lot. We try to get them to go back and redo it. They may just refuse to. But a lot of times they will try to do that exam, and it gets to a problem at the opposite end. If they can grant the case without complying with some of the remand instructions, they should, and they're allowed to. A lot of times they won't until every single remand instruction is done, even though they don't need to really comply with all of them if they can already award the benefit. I'm dealing with one like that now. It was remanded 4 years ago. They can grant the benefit exactly the way the case sets, but there's one little thing that the board suggested they do, and that's if they couldn't otherwise grant it. I cannot get them to budge on it.
Yeah, we feel your pain.
Yeah, it's frustrating. So I don't know. I wish I could give you a better answer than that.
Timothy, part 1, currently at SMC-M, based on loss of use, PTSD being rated at 100%, and based on my 5 separate and distinct ratings over 50%. I should be receiving SMC-O. Based on your great advice last week, can I schedule an appointment with someone from your team to fight for this for me, since you said all the regional offices not granting any more than a full or half step and not case law. My PTSD is well documented as well and has been static since 2019. Have had issue on leaving the stove on, issues with my memory, concentration, and other things that impact my ADLS. I think you just need to send it in and let somebody look at it. I can't really say. Just send it in and let us look at it. That's all I can tell you. Now, I would like to take a moment and have Kerry explain the latest success he's had. And these, would you tell us about these? Are veterans you saw stationed where? And
well, this so on January the 10th, I had to look at the date. VA come out with an interim final rule, which means it's a new regulation that although it's complying with some of the notice and comment, it's not on hold for 60 days pending the notice and comment. In other words, it's effective when it's published. That's basically what an interim final rule is. And so this rule, obviously, because the PACT Act, if you back up a little bit, created presumptions of exposure to all kinds of things in the Gulf War, in Iraq, Afghanistan, did a lot of good stuff. All right. Um, there was a group that it did help, but didn't help as much as it should have. Uh, a group that served in a base called K2 in Uzbekistan early on in the war in Afghanistan. It's around 2001. So, we're talking 20 something years ago, 23, 24 years ago. Uh, early on in the war, there was a base called K2 is what is kind of what we call it. There's a much larger name for it. It was an old Russian base. Um, and that's where some of our initial sort of high-speed troops were deployed to. That base turned out to be rather toxic, um,
Rather.
very toxic, very toxic. Uh, the government has not owned up to the level of toxins that were on this base. Um, now, everything else in Afghanistan, Iraq was also toxic with the burn pits, and so picture all of the stuff that that regular troops in both those theaters were being exposed to, and then add a few more things to it, and that's what you got with K2. Uh, right down to it. I'll just say right down to because it's out in the public now, but it's right down to yellow cake uranium. That's processed uranium. DoD's not acknowledged that; they're not going to. Um, anyway, there's a group, a number of groups that's kind of been advocating for these K2 vets for a number of years to try to get VA and DoD to acknowledge their individual exposures. They've kept going after the PACT Act because uh, there were a lot of disabilities that these guys are getting that the PACT Act didn't cover. A lot of some cancers that they didn't cover, multi-symptom illnesses, kind of like what you see from the first Gulf War, that they didn't cover. Um, and so, if it was the regular PACT Act cancers, which is a lot of them, this group was covered. But there's a lot of other stuff that this group felt that they were falling through the cracks, and I agree, they were. Um, it was depleted uranium. Obviously, that's the only thing that DoD and VA would acknowledge, other than some, um, some other toxins like sludge in the ground. But there was enriched uranium there. So it raises a lot of questions. What the heck is enriched uranium and yellowcake uranium doing on the base? And so, for reasons that I'm sure are legit, DoD doesn't want that cat out of the bag, even though I'm letting it out. It's already been let out, so hopefully no rock eyes will get dropped on my house here. Uh, but when you're breathing that kind of stuff in, yellow cake is dust. So think of breathing processed uranium into your lungs. Uh, Not good. Okay. Uh, and so anyway, these groups advocated for a long time. John Stewart helped them. He helped with the PACT Act. He helped this group afterwards. I helped them to a degree, um, and a lot of good things happened. Never got the acknowledgement of the exposures that we were hoping, but they are adding K2 vets to the group of first Gulf War, basically Gulf War One, so to speak, up to 3.317. I don't want to get too technical in the regs, but for undiagnosed illnesses and multi-symptom illnesses, which plagued the first Gulf War and plagued Iraq veterans specifically for ever since 1991. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
the PACT Act included Afghanistan in the regular Gulf War rules, but it didn't include the K2 group. Okay, so VA has changed, and that rule was done a little while back, but it didn't really get any press. Nobody, a few people wrote about it, but most people don't know about it. So if you get an undiagnosed illness or a multi-symptom illness, and you're in K2, that you're going to be qualified under the regular Gulf War rules. But this rule that come out January 10th now presumes service connection for acute leukemias, chronic leukemias, multiple myelomas, myelodysplastic syndromes, and myelofibrosis. Now, they did this based on exposure to particulate matter, or PM 2.5, which is particulate matter that's 2.5 microns or smaller. So it's almost like baby powder. It's dust. I mean, very fine dust and smaller stuff you can't see. So that includes burn pit emissions and any, anything else that was in the environment that's getting kicked up by vehicles, explosions, whatever it may be, whatever makes up that 2.5 micron dust, whatever it is. All right. So it presumes exposure to whatever that stuff is in the dust just by calling it PM 2.5. That's kind of in simplest terms. So, all right, if you were at this location, then we concede you were exposed to this type of PM 2.5, and you're going to get presumptive service connection for these types of cancers, in addition to what PACT Act has already done. So, it's a good change. We would have liked to have seen other things like Parkinson's, things that aren't necessarily cancerous, autoimmune diseases. We would have definitely liked to have seen both of those, Parkinson's and autoimmune diseases, because there's a ton of autoimmune diseases. But even though there's no presumptive for it, those cases can now be claimed under the original Gulf War regulations and statutes for multi-symptom illnesses. It's medically unexplained chronic multi-symptom illness, to be clear, or undiagnosed illnesses. Most of it's going to be the other one. So those can be claimed under those rules, even though it's not a straight out presumptive. That's a complicated set of rules that VA gets wrong a lot, but at least it gives people that are suffering for those types of conditions a fighting chance. It gives them some law to kind of bite into their case with, other than just kind of dangling out there with no real rule or law that says, hey, this is how you get service connection. I don't know if that makes sense the way I explained it, but anyway, this is in effect now, and for all these cancers. Now they made this rule effective for everyone in Iraq, Afghanistan, the first Gulf War from 1990-91. If you've ever served in theater overseas in the global war on terrorism, from 91 or from 1990 up to the present, then you're included. In other words, this didn't go in just for the K2 group. It went in for everyone. But the K2 group was the driver for this. This would not have happened, in my opinion, had it not been for the K2 group of vets that kept fighting after the PACT Act to try to get VA to do this. And I can tell you now, VA did it. Okay, the Secretary of VA decided to do this. I can't say the same thing about DOD. I don't think any of this would have happened with DOD would have had their way. Sorry, DOD, but you make VA look like the nice guy on the block.
Never thought you'd say that.
Please don't drop anything on my house.
But this was a big win for the vets, and this is what Kerry has worked so hard on. And he has been working with this administration trying to get them to do this. And, it's over on the 20th next week. And so this was a manna from heaven. On the 10th, he said, look what just fell. So
yeah, that's a good point, because we were being told that the administration wants to do something, but we also knew the administration was ending soon. And if it didn't happen, who knows? These guys would have to basically start all over with the new administration, with no guarantee that anything would have anything favorable would have been done for them. So this is right in the skin of the teeth there, in the nick of time they got this in. So I'm glad the secretary did it. I'm glad to have been a small part of it, and and we'll see how it works going forward.
Yeah, I'm glad for the veterans and their family. It's been a long time. So congratulations, Kerry.
And we've got numerous
Hope your
other
house is still
battles.
standing.
We got numerous other battles in our
We got lots of battles, but when you win one like that, you just have to take a moment and
Yeah.
feel good. You just worked hard on that. Nate, you're going to post what Kerry said online, so you'll know exactly what's been granted. Meanwhile, let's see if we can do some more questions before our time is up. Mike Allen, do you think the VA will pull back DBQs you already have accepted or ones on claims still processing? I don't think, if you've already sent them in and they've already processed, I think you're fine. And, Matt and I looked into that, and we also talked to Kerry about that. And even if they withdraw them, right now, if you go to our website, we tell you where to go to download those on the VA. If they withdraw them, then we're going to put up all the ones that we can find, so you'll be on our website, so you'll have them. So I don't know what the VA is going to do, but I don't want you to worry about it. We're going to do everything we can to keep those available for you.
Yeah, that's a really interesting topic. VA's been preaching for years that, we don't think people can use these and defraud the government. I have not. I mean, that's that kind of their reasoning behind some of this is anybody could use them to file a claim, and I have not ever seen these used to defraud the government. The examiner's got to put their license number and all that stuff on there. I'm not saying it's never happened, but I haven't witnessed it.
I haven't either. Private doctors, they are very reluctant to do anything except what they think is the truth. I'm not one. I don't have a rubber stamp around me, and
I mean, they act like everything's everything's in a fraud, and it's not.
No.
It's a lot harder to get away with that than they make it out to be.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox.
To be eligible for SMCS, you must have a single condition rated at 100% correct. I'm 100% PTSD, permanent and total, scheduler, but ratings are 70, 50, 30. You've got a combined rating of 100% is what you're saying. And yes, that's what you need. And then you need an additional 60% to get the SMCS, in addition to all the ratings that made the 100%.
Yes.
ST, when the regional office start applying the law from the Alaska decision on SMCT, is it unfair to have to still go to the board for these? What's fair and unfair doesn't seem to be an issue with the VA. I think you're always going to have to go to the board. I've seen very few of these granted, and definitely not the regional office.
Yeah, try to convince people at the regional office that they have to comply with court decisions.
Yeah, they don't want, if you actually have a conference, they go, I don't want to hear that. Don't talk to me about court decisions. So go to the BVA. Agent 2017, hello. Why does the regional office use the remand date from the BVA instead of the date the appeal is received by the BVA? Thank you. Kerry, other than wanting to look good, I can't think of an answer. What do you think?
So the VA uses cycle times, okay, and this, what you just mentioned here, is just one example of a cycle time. There are plenty of others. For example, VA will do the same thing if you file an HLR, all right, from a rating decision. That claim date is now the date you filed the HLR, not the 6 months prior it was waiting to get decided, okay? If that HLR decides there's a duty to assist error and sends it back, that date of claim now becomes the date of the duty to assist error return, not the date of the HLR, and certainly not the date 6 months prior that the case was originally, so, and on, all the way up to the date of a remand, okay? And so VA has, for a number of years, gotten into this practice where every beginning of a new cycle starts the clock over, okay? And so they get to pull all these reports now and say appeals on HLRs are, let me see here, are taking 3 months.
Yeah.
Decisions from board appeals are taking 4 months.
Yep.
They don't tell you that this case has been pending for 3.5 years or 4 years or 5 years. Right now, is it important that they know these cycle times? Absolutely. Because then they don't know where their choke points are if they're paying attention to them. But they're not paying attention to them if they're not looking at the entire cycle, not
Yes.
just the individual cycles. They used to do both. Okay. Now they only do the latter. And it's all about fudging the numbers. And I don't care what anybody in VA says, it is all about that and nothing more.
100%. I agree with you.
And it's shameful that they do that and how they do it.
Yeah. And the BVA does the same thing. They don't call up the case until they feel like they can be decided within a reasonable amount of time. And so they don't say the case has been sitting there 6 years. It says, we just got this case and decided it within 7 months. So it's a game they're playing.
Yeah.
Gerald Keith, one of two. I have claims that are at the BVA starting in August of 2024. My original effective date is July 2032. That's backwards. Will I keep my original? Yes, you will keep your original effective date. And if I get a decision from the BVA, but remember the BVA, yes, you keep your effective date, but then the VA has to give you, they have to grant an effective date. So you may have filed at one time, but they may give you an effective date that's later than that, which is something you want to appeal. Sherry Sanford, hello and thank you. I had an x-ray 2 weeks after I joined the Army that showed spina bifida. Are they not required to tell me that? They said nothing but denied my claim. What if it was cancer?
Well, I think I know where they're going with that. They probably denied it based on a congenital defect. Cancer would not be a congenital defect. You wouldn't have been born with the cancer. And I'm playing devil's advocate here, I'm not taking up for VA, but I've seen them do this a lot with spina bifida, especially when it was discovered right after you join service. They will take the position that a couple of things. One, spina bifida is always genetic, and let's just say it's not. All right, it was discovered within a few weeks or a couple of weeks after you join military service. Therefore, it could not have been caused by military service without some form of intervening event. Did the military have to tell you? That's probably a different debate. I think they should have. But was it disqualifying in the military? I don't know. Did you finish your tour out and it never bother you? All of that makes a difference in the actual VA claim. But yeah, that could very well be why they denied it, just saying it's a congenital condition and wasn't aggravated by service. That doesn't mean it wasn't. That doesn't mean you shouldn't appeal it. Cancer, they can't say that. They can't say it's congenital. Right. I hope.
But the back, it could have been asymptomatic. If it was asymptomatic, then that's your argument. That it became symptomatic because of service. So yeah. I don't have all the facts, but those are just thoughts we have from your question. I think we're finished. Nate, thank you for joining us this week. Kerry, it's always good to be with you. And I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Bye, Kerry.
Bye. Good to be with you, Carol, as well. I appreciate it.